Hello everyone, welcome to the show where in this episode we're going to be talking all things online arbitrage and used book selling, and I am joined by Joji Davenport. Yeah, how are you doing? Do you want to give us an intro of who you are, what you do, maybe how you got into Amazon, and we can kind of riff from there?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Seth. I really appreciate it. Just probably try to do it pretty briefly. I'm a high school chemistry teacher now, but I basically found out about Amazon back in college with Resell, Steve Rakin. So that was kind of my gateway into it. I started flipping used textbooks while I was on my college campus for my undergrad. Basically, then went to get my master's degree and realized the potential of flipping textbooks. Like there's insane value of textbooks. So essentially, every day I would just be in the Facebook textbook exchange groups, the free and for sale groups, and I would just watch as people listed their textbooks, and I'd send very competitive offers. And basically every day I was picking up like 10 textbooks, and that was enough basically to cash flow college. So I was able to graduate from college debt free, which is pretty insane. And then transition out of that, I was able to get my teaching job. I'm now a high school chemistry teacher. And inherently, it's much harder to find books when you're actually working somewhere and you're at a high school rather than on a college campus able to pick up books. So I had to try to figure out a way, how do I find books, not able to be there? And so that's kind of where I learned about softwares like eFlip, which I used a little bit in 2017 or 2018. I'm sure you're probably familiar with that software. And now I kind of stumbled across back in 2019 how to use Keepa to source books using the Keepa Deals page, the product finder, the track product alert. And then also recently learned how to use FlipMine over the last year and a half. So I basically buy books online that are undervalued and then flip them back for what they're worth. And so that's kind of my business model now.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So wait, so you've actually been selling for longer than me then?
Yeah, I've been selling since I actually just looked at my Amazon account, and you can look at on Keepa, you can look at when you started getting reviews. So I started getting reviews in 2015.
Wow. Okay, so you're a proper veteran of the game. So how come it? obviously you had a proper job and stuff, but how come it took you? Like your journey took quite a long time to get to this point, I guess.
I think I've always been doing it behind the scenes. I just wasn't super focused on it because at the time, 2016, 2017, 2018, I was going through my teaching credential program. So I was really just trying to become a teacher. So it was like, that was my main goal at the time. It was kind of Amazon was just staying on the side, which like I said, actually ended up paying for all my school, which is really awesome. But yeah, it wasn't something that I guess I seriously devote a lot of time to. And I've kind of like dabbled in and out of it. We can talk about like back in 2021 as well. I had my account get suspended for selling a few counterfeit textbooks, which was a struggle as well. And obviously at the time I didn't know that was even a thing. So yeah, I guess I wasn't super serious about it. I think a lot of it was because it was always just a side hustle for me. It wasn't like a main gig. But now that I started producing YouTube content and I see like the potential, I think it's motivating me a lot more to go full throttle. But just to give you some, a little bit of insight, like basically every year I would sell between like 20 to 50K. Last year was the first year I actually broke 100K in sales. And this year I think I'm already at 50K in the year. So definitely putting more time and effort into it. But still, like I said, I have a full-time job. And so the goal is for literally my Amazon income to pay for all of our living expenses so that we can invest basically my income, my wife's income, because we're really motivated to try to retire early in our mid-30s. So that's kind of the goal.
Oh, so you kind of part of the FIRE community?
I am, absolutely, yeah. FIRE at 35, that's the goal.
That's cool. So we've got the same goal then. I kind of want to retire at 35 as well. I just think that's a good,
really? Okay.
Good benchmark. So it's like,
what, cool. How old are you now, Seth?
31, so I've got 3.5 years.
You're 31? Okay, I'm 28, you? Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm 28,
so you got a bit of time. I'm sure you'll get
there. I got a little bit of time, yeah.
That's inspiring though, the fact that you managed to, or you're debt free, because I know that school for you guys costs way more than over here. I think I've still got a student loan of about $35,000 equivalent. So for you, it's a lot more than that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely depends on kind of how thoughtful you are about it when you're going. But I went to a public school, which was still, I think tuition was still about like $13,000 a year. And obviously if you room and board, it's double that. So yeah, it's very easy to spend $30,000 or $40,000 a year. And if you don't have that money, you'd have to take out loans. But for me, I went to a school that was a really good school that was local to me. So I always commuted. And like I said, I was just, I must have been really buff back in college because I was just, bags and bags of books. And like I said, it was enough to basically cash flow college. Like I didn't come out of it with tons of money, but I basically came out of that without any debt and a little bit of money. So that was definitely a win.
Yeah, super cool that you're amazing that you were able to do that while studying. Yeah. And that's the cool thing about books, isn't it? It's such a good side hustle. Yeah. It's also something that you can take to the next level if you dedicate time to it. But I would love to just dig in a bit more about that ban situation, because I had the same thing in the UK market. I got banned not because I was selling counterfeit textbooks, but because I was selling like counterfeit Pokemon games and all sorts of rubbish that I didn't realize I was doing.
Yeah.
But so what actually happened? Like I've had emails before with policy warnings, and so, like if you leave them 6 months, they usually disappear, right? But I presume maybe you got a few in a row at the same time, or I can just talk us through that.
Yeah. So this was back in early 2021. I basically got test buyed out by the 3 major publishing companies: McGraw-Hill, Cengage, Pearson. So if you're not aware, basically there's a consortium with those 3 big textbook companies that work with a very big law firm, and their job is really just to test buy people's accounts, people that are doing high sales volume with textbooks. And my understanding is that they don't even really need to prove to Amazon that the books that they bought are actually counterfeit, because at the end of the day, if someone ever gives you a counterfeit claim, it's up to you to prove that it's actually not counterfeit. And so, again, my understanding from talking to some people that are also bigger in the game is that the sort of patterns that they were seeing is that people would get test buyed out. Like you'd get 3 or 4 test buys within like a week and a half, 2-week period. And then basically you'd get hit with like 3 counterfeit claims, like boom, boom, boom. Your account would go at risk of deactivate, or would be at risk of deactivation, which is what my account went to. And then you either have to provide an invoice to say that these are actually legit books, which you can't do unless you actually bought them from the actual website or distributor. And what ended up happening is I had to submit a plan of action. So I ended up hiring an Amazon attorney, which was a joke. They probably just outsourced it to a VA, and they didn't really do that great of a job. So I think it dropped like $1,500 on probably should have done more vetting. But at that time I was kind of scared, because I was like, dude, my account is at risk of deactivation. It's pretty insane. Like, so basically I had to submit a plan of action, which basically said, hey, every book that I come across, I'm going to source legitimately. Also, if I ever suspect that something is a counterfeit, I'm going to mail it to the publisher at no cost so that they can dispose of it and they can inspect it. That if I do buy something from a distributor and it looks counterfeit, that I have to basically tell the law firm who that person was. So long story short, everything ended up falling up after like 6 months. I think I was actually able to get rid of one of those claims with my plan of action, but the other 2, I just had to wait 6 months for them to fall off. And as soon as those fell off, then my account was back in the green. But yeah, I think the take-home message there was that these publishing companies have a lot of power. And like I said, they don't have to necessarily prove that what you are selling is counterfeit. All they have to do is buy it and then tell Amazon, hey, make sure that this person is actually sourcing legitimately, which is kind of very difficult to do if you're buying online, even from the Amazon marketplace.
Yeah, thanks for that. I've recently got one from that law firm. It's called OG and something. Yeah.
Oppenheimer, yeah.
Yeah, I got one, but I've only had one. So I don't know if they did a bunch of test buys, because a lot of people, like, they look at their orders, don't they, and then they see where it's gone. I've not actually done that, just because I'm hoping that there's no more gets filed. But I'm kind of just leaving it there for now, just because I've only got one.
Okay.
When you're doing like higher volume, I think. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I might have to hit you up for advice on the plan of action if things get further. But I do get a lot of questions about things like counterfeit textbooks, because people worried. A lot of people might not even go near McGraw-Hill or Cengage. So what would your advice be to newbies or any sort of seller who wants to kind of limit or damage limitation on that aspect of the business?
Yeah, great question. I would say definitely look at BooksRun. So BooksRun has a counterfeit probability check calculator, and what you can do is you can run the ISBN through that calculator, and it'll tell you if the book that you're running through that calculator is likely, unlikely to be counterfeit, likely, or very likely to be counterfeit. And it's by no means 100% accurate, but it gives you a picture, it gives you an idea of if something could be counterfeit. So my understanding of how it works is kind of like a crowdsourced thing, where BooksRun is like, so these are books that have definitely been, like, there's been a lot of counterfeits on the market, so they're kind of more aware of that. And so if you run an ISBN through that calculator and it comes back likely or very likely, I just probably wouldn't touch it. Or maybe you can think about selling it to a buyback company, or unless if you think you're really good at identifying, legitimate copies, like if they have the sticker on them, if everything, the glue, the color of the glue binding matches, and if the pages feel glossy, like there are some things that can help you with that. But I would say just running it through the probability check is probably a first good preventative measure, because a lot of the books that you will see that are very likely to be counterfeit are ones that, Amazon or people have been called out on a lot, so you can avoid those ones. Also, the one thing for newer sellers as well is that a lot of people are just generally restricted in the popular textbook category, which is actually not a bad thing at all, because those books tend to be very likely to be counterfeited. And those are books that if you could sell today, you probably would eventually get test bite on, and you'd have to anyway, you would have to show proof of authenticity anyways, that you bought it from a distributor or something. So I would just say run it through that book counterfeit probability check. Also, just use some common sense. If you're still handling your books, make sure you're looking at the color of the glue binding. Like a lot of times if it's like white or yellow, that's kind of like a giveaway that it could potentially be counterfeit. Also, if the pages fall off, like sometimes you'll get pages that look like they're printer paper, like clear like giveaway that that's not right. Sometimes like on the back of the book, you'll see that the barcode's a little blurry, or maybe it doesn't match. Like that's also a dead giveaway. So there are some things that, you could do due diligence on, but at the end of the day, it's not a zero risk model. There's definitely risk associated with it. I send all my books to a prep center. I'm not even looking at my textbooks. So really all I'm doing is running them through the book counterfeit probability check. And, who knows, in the future, I probably will get, a counterfeit claim as well. And I can't really do anything about it. It's just kind of the nature of the business.
Yeah, it'll, just like you say, it is the nature of the business. But I can say that I've been doing this for 5 years, and I've actually only had one policy warning from that law firm. I've had a couple of others, but nothing's ever come to a head. So if people are watching this or listening and worried about that aspect, it is kind of a tiny portion of the business that you don't really need to worry about, right? And compared to other categories, I would say books has got to be the lowest risk to sell. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, IP complaints for other categories, for just traditional online arbitrage, I'm not sure how much of that you're doing now, but yeah, I'm starting to dabble a little bit in just traditional online arbitrage. It seems like that's a space where that could be, IP complaints probably could be probably more of a problem than you would face. And going back to the counterfeit claims, I've had 3 in 7 years of selling. So, but they just happened literally one run right after the other. So that's kind of why my account got suspended.
You got very unlucky then. But no, going back to
the thing is the thing is that I don't think it was. I mean, I guess I did get unlucky, but it's actually something that a lot of sellers had seen, was like they're getting test bite out like 1, 2, 3. So it was a pattern observed among like a whole bunch of Scout IQ users. So it's interesting. I got unlucky with it, but hopefully they don't do it again. I mean, I can't sell books in that restricted. I'm restricted in popular textbooks, so I can't even sell those anymore. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, the one that happened to me was one of those Aspen casebook law books.
Aspen.
So I can imagine that's like a more popular one, just because it's a popular textbook. But so don't buy those, people, even though there's lots of money to be paid on them. But no, so you said you're dabbling in OA. Can you talk to us a little bit about that before we get into the real juicy book topics?
Sure, man. I've just been doing it a little bit. So I've maybe spent about $1,000 or $2,000 on products that, just doing some preliminary research. I would say my skill is definitely keep analysis, which I think aligns well with traditional online arbitrage. So I've been just watching some videos from like more prominent YouTubers, like, Warner Fields, Flip for Miles. Like there are a couple smaller YouTubers as well that provide really good content. And so my understanding or just doing online arbitrage for literally like a few months and actually just dabbling in it a little bit and spending a few $1,000s is that, I'd say it's probably harder to find good products. Like it definitely takes quite a bit of work. Like you might be trying to, reverse source for an hour or manual source for an hour before you come across something. But what I will say is that if you do find something that's crazy, like it can get really crazy. So I found a product that has been discontinued. I was able to pick up like 30 units of it, and the buy cost was like a little over $7, and they're selling for like 65. So it's like, it's crazy the potential that OA can have, traditional OA can have, but also, there are limitations to the model. But I'm just dabbling in it right now, and like I said, I've only spent a couple $grand on it, but so far everything that I bought has actually turned out and actually sold. So that's cool, and it's been making profit. Obviously, just way lower ROI.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that you obviously are going to be able to smash OA if you dedicate time to it, because like you say, you've got good keeper skills, right? And you've been selling those for so long. So you must have looked at thousands upon thousands of keep charts by now. So surely that's going to lend itself to OA. But so I find on YouTube and any other like influencer stuff going on that so many people start with books and then they they see either OA as or wholesale as the natural transition. Whereas you've obviously been selling books for years. I've kind of not properly transitioned out of books. I've dabbled in a bit of shoes. So like, why have you stayed in books? And it looks like you're going to be focusing on it this year. Like why books pretty much?
Yeah, I think a little bit of it is just the comfortability with this. Like I've been doing for so long that it's like, it's something that I actually have a skill at, that I'm really good. I think I think the main reason that people actually move out of books is because they can't find a source. Like they can't find a way to get reliable inventory that actually will move fast enough or has a good enough ROI, because most people who start Amazon start with a thrifting model. They start with like free book pickups, going to garage sales, going to thrift stores, and that model is really difficult because it's all about volume. And like in the reality, 95% of what you scan is worthless. So you're only looking at about 5% of what you actually scan has some value. And a lot of times that stuff isn't even really valuable. Like it might sell for $15 or $20, which inherently is not something that actually holds a lot of value. So I think it was more that I was able to figure out a way to source books online that many of the people couldn't figure out how to do, so that the margins were really good. And then also that source was steady enough that I could do it from home, that it worked for my lifestyle. So it's like, I guess I just see that the niche is, I feel like there's just so much opportunity in that niche, that the amount of ROI that you can make on the books that I buy online is pretty insane. So I also see that it's like, I read this book called The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz. He also wrote the book called Profit First. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but the whole idea of the pumpkin plan is like, if you think of all of the farmers that try to win that big pumpkin contest, I'm not sure if that's a thing in England, probably not, but in America, people are really, people really like this idea of growing the biggest pumpkin possible. And so the whole point of growing the biggest pumpkin possible is that you focus literally on that pumpkin, like on the exact soil that you need, the exact water, like where did the seed from the championship winner of the previous year come from. It's like really just honing in and stressing on one thing and doing it really well. And so I felt like with me, books specifically, something that I know really well. It's something that I know how to source probably much better than other people. I can look at, tens and tens of thousands of Keepa charts and really easily determine if this is probably going to be a good buy or not. And so I guess to me, it's just like trying to put all my, try to focus all my energy in this one thing that I'm really good at. And obviously it's not the best model, but it's been enough. For like last year, I sold 105,000 of books. It was about 30K in profit. And like I said, that's enough to pay for all our living expenses. And then my wife and I are able to make, well over $100,000 that we can then invest in the stock market so that we can eventually retire early. So I think it just suits our lifestyle, but it's also exactly what I need. It's what I'm good at. And that's why I decided to keep doing it.
Makes a lot of sense. Focus on your core competencies. I've not heard of the pumpkin plan, but I've heard of Profit First. A few people have mentioned that to me recently, which I feel like is usually a sign that I need to read it. I'm not sure if I've tried reading it. Like, what's the basic premise of Profit First? Because I've been told by so many people to read it.
Yeah, the premise is that most businesses operate on, you take your your revenue minus your expenses, and that equals your profit. And it's to flip it, which is to say that your profit is equal to your sales I forget what exactly the formula is, but the premise of it is that you should pay yourself first. And most people are in a business where they're constantly just reinvesting back into their business. But the idea is, the whole purpose of a business is to actually make you money. And so what you do is you would set up these number of bank accounts like that, cost of goods, you would have like income, you'd have taxes, operating expenses, all these things that you would basically allocate your money in specific steps so that you're always paying yourself first. So the whole idea is that if you're a bookseller, you would take that check that Amazon gives you, and the first thing that you would do is actually take out the cost of goods. So you would like replenish your cost of goods account. So like, this is how much money I can spend on goods. And then theoretically, what you'd have left over is actually your income. And the first thing that you would do is take your profit. So it's like, you take a 5% profit split from that, and then you pay your owner's compensation. So the idea is that it's just a way to prioritize you actually paying yourself and the business actually being profitable. And a lot of people realize that they can't actually pay themselves anything because they have too many expenses. So it kind of opens up these other holes in your business that you're like, okay, I really need to get a handle on my operating expenses because I'm spending way too much money on operating expenses. Or I guess maybe I didn't do a great job explaining it, but basically it's just a way that you prioritize the income that you receive so that you're always paying yourself before you pay anyone else.
No, that makes sense. And it also kind of brings me on to my next question, which is, well, you're talking about like operating expenses and stuff. What does your business kind of look like? I don't know if you've got any VAs or like what sort of software you pay for. Like, do you use Inventory Labs, for example? Could you like elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, for sure. Right now I do have 2 VAs, so I'm paying them $400 a month. Then also pay them 5% commission on any book that they sell for a profit. So that's kind of the overhead operating expenses. And then as far as softwares go, like obviously you need, I use Keepa. That's by far the number one software to have. And also I have SellerAmp. I have a listing service. I use GoToLister. It's kind of a newer listing software. I'm not sure if you heard about it. So I actually don't use Inventory Lab. I just keep control of my books in just a regular Google Sheet. So I basically track every single book that I purchase. I'll be able to pull up, this is how much I sold it for. This was when I bought it. This is how I bought it. This is how much profit it was. This is who bought it. So I have all that stuff in a Google Sheet, and any other softwares that I'm using. Be cool as well. So for a repricer. So yeah, I mean, definitely have a little bit of overhead there. So definitely well over $1,000 a month on operating expenses between VAs and all the softwares.
Okay. Are you using Be Cool? Good man. I also use that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the best for book
Very
sellers,
cool.
whereas a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's good. It's good value. I've not got a bad
Yeah,
word
I
to
know.
say
A lot of
about
people
it.
say they don't like it. A lot of people use Reprice It. I haven't used Reprice It, but I don't know. A lot of people complain about it, but I find it does exactly what I need it to do. I use custom rules. Do you use the AI or do you use custom rules?
I used the AI for a while, thought it was amazing, and then changed every single of my books to just the traditional rule that I've always used, which is actually on the first video on my YouTube channel, and nothing changed the difference. So I think the AI rule is a little bit of a marketing scam. I hate to say it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried it. I tried it a little bit as well. I didn't see any increased success. Nothing noticeable. So yeah, same thing.
No, I just think that if you put, say, sales maximizer, then it just drops your price to the minimum. And then if you put profit maximizer, it like tries to put your book to the maximum. So it's a little bit like, is it worth using? It's interesting to use a Google Sheet instead of Inventory Labs. Like I used to use a Google Sheet or Caleb Ross tracking spreadsheet, which I thought was good. But once you get to a certain amount of rows, it kind of dies. Like Excel's not powerful enough. So yeah, that's interesting. So I would highly recommend Inventory Labs because it's $70 a month and it just does everything for you. It's so nice.
Yeah, I probably should. Definitely probably should go over to Inventory Lab. One thing that I am interested is how exactly does that work with your prep center? Because I know that, like for example, Central Virginia Prep, which is the prep center that I use, they use their own listing software. They don't use Inventory Lab. So how do you go about getting? I'm not sure about Little Owl, but how do you go about getting the inventory that you bought that your prep center listed for you into Inventory Lab?
Yeah, good question. I was just thinking about, that's also what I was going to ask you about GoToLister, because that's a listing software, right? But I've always just got my prep center to list my books for, say, Central Virginia Prep used to charge 50 cents for it, might be more, because that was 5 years ago. I can't remember. So then I don't need to worry about using a listing software, right? And then I just make sure that the SKUs, we upload the SKUs. Like I get my VA to upload the SKUs for our CSV. So then the COGS and the SKUs go into Inventory Labs. And then Inventory Labs also syncs with Be Cool, which makes it really useful because then you don't need to put your cost into Be Cool. So that's pretty useful. I think it pays itself in dividends there, Inventory Labs. But I guess.
Yeah, I think that's something that is definitely a next step in my business that I need to do because like I said, I'm doing everything on a Google Sheet right now. I use SellerAmp to basically like one-click export all the data from the Amazon page over to the spreadsheet. So it's not like filling out the spreadsheet's difficult, but it definitely would be much nicer just to log in and see a software that says like, here's the sales, here's everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's got P&Ls and you can see your SKU profitability, async profitability, and you can plug in other data. It's nice. But yeah, so speaking of like going to the next step, you kind of talked a little bit about what you want to do this year, but how do you see your business developing over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just probably buying a little bit more inventory, especially since I, recently brought on a couple of VAs. So back last November, that's when I hired both my VAs to help me source. So I think it's just going to be because we're buying more inventory, I think naturally just get to sell more. Like I said, last year did 105K in sales. Basically, that was just myself working about 2 hours a day. So, I'm a high school chemistry teacher. I also have a newborn baby. So I basically just source between 10:30 p.m. and midnight. So about an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And that was enough to do 100,000 in sales, which is about 30K in profit. And now, because I have a couple of VAs and I think I'm a good teacher, that's what I do as a profession, I think they're also doing a great job of finding inventory. I wouldn't say it's quite as good as what like the inventory that I find on an average basis, but they're definitely good enough that what they're buying is profitable. So I would say probably same sort of thing. It's just rinse and repeat. It's the same sort of sourcing strategy. Just do it more frequently, do it more often, buy more books, spend more money, and then you should be able to sell more and then also have more profit. So I think the goal this year, I think conservatively, is to hit 150K this year, although I think I could probably get closer to 200K. And then for the profit to get, maybe not exactly double because I have a little bit more expenses with VAs, but get to the point where now by the end of this year, it's like the income from Amazon is actually more than I need for my wife and I to live, so that maybe we can even start investing some of that money in the stock market. So like I said, my wife and I are super into financial independence, retire early, which you are as well. So the whole goal of this Amazon thing is just for it to pay for our living expenses. So our other normal jobs literally just get invested in the stock market.
Nice. Yeah, so you mentioned your VAs, actually. That's another good topic to dig into, especially because you are a teacher. But like you said, you taught your VAs. I think a lot of people in the book selling game struggle with just hiring a VA because they're a bit scared to take on that expense, and also another big factor is they're worried about teaching them. I think they don't really know what to do. They might not have been a manager before, they might not be a leader or whatever. So how did you approach the hiring and the training, and also what advice would you give to people listening or watching?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that at every large step that I made in my Amazon business, the reason that prevented me from going from here to here was fear or like anxiety of like the unknown. You don't know what you don't know. And every time that I've taken that leap and I've looked back, I've realized, hey, that was really not that hard at all. And a VA is no different, because a VA is not some magical person or some magical thing that is super hard. It's just a human being. It's like, you could have a VA like your neighbor could be a VA. It's like, it's just another human being that you have to communicate to. Hey, these are the tasks that you need to complete, and then you pay them for that service. For me, it was like, I also I don't know what I don't know. So I wanted naturally to go find someone who could teach me about maybe the best way to hire VA, someone who's actually done it before. And so I used the one VA away training course, which syncs up with online jobs at PH, which is what I'm sure we use to find your VAs as well. But essentially, I think that was like $100 course, broke it down into everything that you need to know. Is more generalized. It wasn't specific to Amazon FBA. And a little side note, Steve Rakin and I'm not sure if you know who that is, but Rakin Profit, Steve Rakin, he and I are actually making a VA course specifically for Amazon sellers. So that's coming out soon here in the future as well. But I'd say really what it boils down to is the filtering down in the beginning, because there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of people that want to work for you. The thing though is that a very small percentage of them are actually going to be very good. Like if you think of 200 or 300 people that apply for your post, there's probably only like 3 or 4 of them who you would feel really good about long-term, who like 3 years from now would still be working for you. So the whole point is like, how do you take those 200 or 300 people that apply and whittle it down to get to those 2 or 3 people that are very confident, that are good communicators, that will show up. So I think a lot of the pitfalls are that people don't really understand how to filter it down. And I'm not necessarily talking about just like, hey, if you read the post, you attach a picture of a pink Cadillac. I mean, like actually getting down to the nitty gritty, like asking them questions about Keepa, like seeing what, like, do they actually understand how to read a Keepa graph already? Or like giving them questions that would require some level of deeper analysis that shows that they have intellect, something that they can't just ask someone else, or something they can't just use ChatGPT for. Like, I would say it really just comes down to filtering out and getting to that small percentage of people that are actually would be a good fit. And, I'm a high school teacher. Like I have 150 students. And I was thinking the other day, like, how many of them would I hire in my business? I'd say probably a small percentage of them, because I want the person who has all the traits, I can check off. There's someone who's reliable. They can show up on time. They're a good communicator. They have an analytical ability. So like, I would say that the biggest thing is just when you jump into getting a VA, I think the term is like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, which is really do your due diligence upfront. Try to get someone who is, try to get 2 or 3 people who could potentially be good candidates. And then what I would do if I were you is not just hire one person. If you had like 2 or 3 people, I would start them off on a trial and say, hey, you 3 people are in the final. I'm going to pick one of you. I'm going to give you each a month to work on this. And we're just going to see who does a better job over this month. And then whoever performs best, not, and also communicates the best, shows the most willingness to learn and stuff like that. I think that's something you could use to find a great VA. And I'm super happy with both the VAs that I found, because I feel like I put a lot of work up front, and it's work. But at the end of the day, the whole point is that if you get someone who's good, they should definitely be able to reduce how much time you need to, spend in the business.
Nice. Yeah, it makes me think of a podcast I listened to the other day. I don't know if you've heard of My First Million, but they're talking about hiring and how it's a bit of a power law where probably 80 to, let's say, 90% of people are fairly average or bad at their job, but you need to find that 10% which will actually 10x your business. So if you found a VA, like my best VA pretty much buys twice as much as everyone else. So yeah, if I could find another 5 of him, that would be awesome. But right. how long do you think you spent roughly training your 2 VAs?
Yeah, basically, when I had hired them, before I hired them, I already had come up with a whole document that it was step by step. Like, this is the process that you follow. Like, these are the things that you need to know. These are the things you need to watch out for. So there's already a course that I built for them. And that course is probably like 5 or 6 hours worth of content. So I was like, here you go. Go ahead and consume this content. When you have questions, let me know. And I think for the first couple of weeks, I just had them trial run. Like I said, hey, just pretend like you're buying these books, add them to the spreadsheet, don't actually buy them. And at the end of every day, I'd basically make a Loom video, like a 10-minute Loom video, and go, okay, this was a great buy, here's why. This was a great buy, here's why. This was a bad buy, here's why, even though they weren't actually buying anything. So for, I think, at least like the first month and a half, it was basically every night I would give them a Loom video. So it's not like it's magic. You find a great person and it's like, okay, now you never have to talk to them or anything again. It's all about communication. It's all about giving them positive feedback. It's all about showing them, hey, this is why this doesn't work. And not be mad about it, because I mean, they're human being. They're trying to learn. How could you expect them to care or know more about Amazon than you do? So you do have to, there is definitely training that goes into it. But I would say definitely just like constant feedback at the end of every day, just one Loom video, connecting with them, saying, here's what you did well. I think that was very helpful.
Oh, that's super helpful. I'm very certain that listeners will value that, because it's a spot on. That's kind of what I do. A lot of Loom videos, because I think most people are visual learners, and especially if they're in the Philippines, it's just easier for them to understand if you're doing lots of Looms. Right. And that's cool that you've done a written document. I've got a book selling Bible, but it goes out of date really quickly. So I've kind of reverted to just doing Looms. But I guess it makes sense if you're teaching the basics. But I agree. It's not easy. It does take quite a lot of upfront work, like you say, but once you get a good team member, then they're very valuable, and hopefully you'll keep them for years. I don't know whether there's a correlation between my best VA. I spent way more time chatting to on Skype one-on-one, so there's probably a correlation there. You've got to give to get back. But when we first connected on Instagram, it was like a month or so, 2 months ago. I remember you told me what your average buy price and average sell price. Well, you've got to tell the audience that, because it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, so right now my average buy cost is about $27. My average sell cost is $99. So definitely I buy fewer books, but I buy books that are a little bit more expensive. And yeah, obviously there's an insane margin on them. So it's not like there's a ton of books out there like that, but I also focus on books that are a little bit more slower moving. So it all comes in context. That seems like an amazing margin, but these aren't books that are flipping in 1 week or 3 weeks. Like these, on average, a book takes about 3.5 months to sell. So it's not like, I had someone comment on my YouTube channel the other day, like, great model and everything, but why wouldn't you just do this for $5 profit books and just sell 10 books in the same amount of time? And it's like, I guess I could do that. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'd rather buy fewer books and spend more money. And I'd really honestly I would prefer to invest capital in sort of like an asset or a book that actually holds value. So I don't just sell textbooks. I actually buy a lot of books that just hold value. Like they're really rare books. They're books that on Keepa are always above $80, always above $100, always above $120. So I'm definitely not afraid to put money into something that has shown proven history of holding value, because if it is like a store of value, it's basically as good as money. And it's very hard for you to lose money on something that inherently has held value for so long. So I guess for me, it's like, I don't shy away from buying stuff that's well over $1 million, even over $2 million, maybe even up to $3 million rank, if I know that the potential return on it is pretty insane. And like, obviously the spread between 27 and 99 is pretty big.
Yeah, that's a huge ROI, very impressive. And it's nice to hear that you go for higher BSR books as well, because I find it very hard to like teach people or tell people that you can't. They do sell faster. They can sell faster than 3 months, right? I mean, people just don't believe it. People think, oh, just got to look at 500k and under. But I guess with the recent Amazon changes, which have been the biggest changes that I've experienced over the last 5 years, my capacity got cut from like, at one point it's 45k like last May, and that now it's at like 15k or something. So how has that looked for you? You were saying to me that you're still on 1,000, are you? On your how many books you're allowed roughly? Is that the same for the next few months? How's that looking?
Yeah, I mean, so right now, like if you think about capacity, so I had basically restock limits were 1,000 for me, so I was never able to get above that. And the reason for that is because everything that I had is so slow moving. Like the average book takes 3.5 months to sell, so that's why generally Amazon would have given you higher restock limits if you're moving stuff more quickly. But it wasn't ever really a problem for me because I never had to use all that space. Because if you think about my average sell cost of being basically $100 per book, if I had 1,000 books, that's like $100,000 of inventory sitting on Amazon. So it was like, for me, because I bought fewer books that were more valuable, wasn't really that big of a deal for me. Because it wasn't like I'm sending in books that sell for $20 or $30. Like I'm sending in books that sell $70, $80, $150, $200. So it's like, that's kind of one way that I was able to get around it. Actually, ironically, the week before they actually transitioned over to storage capacity limits was actually when I hit the 1,000, and then they switched us to the storage capacity. And right now I have 100 cubic feet, and I think I use about like 55 or 60 cubic feet. So I think as time goes on, it's something that I'm definitely going to have to consider. Like, I'm not sure what your experience has been with like bidding for space. I don't know if you need to bid for space or kind of how that works, but I think as I get closer to that 100 cubic feet, which is my storage capacity, I'd have to think about how to solve that. But for right now, it hasn't been an issue.
Nice, you've got plenty, I suppose, for your contrarian stock. It's good to hear. But no, in terms of bidding, I haven't done any bidding yet. I've seen in a couple of Facebook groups people doing it, and it seemed quite reasonably priced. So probably will maybe close, like getting closer to textbook season. But we'll see how that goes. But talking of textbooks and textbook season, I'd like to know what how you approach January and September. Like, do you try to buy as many textbooks as possible in, say, June, July, or do you just do you focus more on all? Well, you said you don't just buy textbooks, but like, what's your strategy around September and January? Yeah,
it's actually ironic. I'm not super into exploiting textbook season. I think back in the day in 2017 when I was using eFlip, which I'm not sure if you use that software or not, but back in 2017, 2018, I definitely was doing a lot of that, trying to exploit the trying to exploit the textbook season. So right now, I actually don't even do a lot of, like, my normal idea of when to buy a book is not like, okay, textbook season's coming up, let's go find a whole bunch of textbooks and then sell them for an inflated price because of the increased demand. Even though I know a lot of people do that, I'm sure you do that as well. I kind of just am like under the impression that there's like really like three business models. It's like you can exploit textbook season, you can exploit the buy box, or you can buy undervalued books. And for me, it's just I'm always on the hunt for buying stuff that is inherently undervalued, where the way you'd make money is just buy it for this super cheap price and then resell it for what it historically sells for. So just by nature, a lot of the books that have value are textbooks. So therefore, I obviously do buy textbooks, but my mindset is not actually like textbook season's coming up in 2 months, let's go buy a whole bunch of textbooks. It's like I'm always just on the hunt for anything that's undervalued. And a lot of times it happens to be textbooks. So by nature, I buy them. But yeah, that's what I say.
That makes sense. But so I remember when I first started and I was looking at Keeper charts and I was seeing a book that maybe sells for like $300 and it was available for say 50, or maybe let's say 100. I would be quite scared to buy that book because at the time $100 was a lot. But we both know that those books will sell if the Keeper chart says it sells. But I know a lot of people get scared off by the higher spend just because it's a bigger risk, isn't it? It's easier to buy 10 books, and if 8 of them sell, then you've already lost money on 2. But like, what would your advice be to people that see those charts and think, oh, I should buy it, but then they don't pull the trigger?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it literally just comes down to confidence and just having the experience of doing it. So I would say just don't go too deep on stuff, like diversify your risk. So there's 2 ways you can diversify your risk, which is you can buy cheaper books, or you can buy more expensive books, but buy fewer quantities of them. So let's say you come across a book and you're like, okay, I can pick this up for $70. It should sell for $170, and there's 5 copies available. Just buy one. And then once you get the repetition, you go, okay, that actually sold. and that actually sold really quick, then maybe next time you buy two. And so as you expand how much capital you have as well, then it makes more sense to take more risk. But if you're somebody who doesn't have a ton of capital in the beginning, I would say you should probably only limit your buying to like one book anyways, because at the end of the day, I'm sure you have as well, bought bad books before. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. Like there's outside circumstances that you couldn't have foreseen. So it's not like Keepa is 100% of the time going to tell you that this is going to happen. It's just, it gives you it gives you a good picture of what historically has happened. And then you just make an educated guess using the information that, hey, this is what should happen in the future, but it doesn't always work out that way. So I would just say stick to probably one book if you're someone who's really scared about spending a lot of money, and then just diversify yourself, right? I think people are going to be limited on two resources, which is your capital and your time. Probably most people are limited first on their capital before their time. So it makes more sense that if you're not sure if this is a good buy, then probably just spend more time trying to source other books, because you have the time to do that because you're limited on capital. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And it's all about skin in the game and experience, isn't it? And sometimes you'll buy a book and then 2 weeks later you think, oh, this was a bad buy, and then it ends up selling. Like that's what I've enjoyed about some bad buys. You look at some Keepa charts and think that book's never going to sell, and then like sold it for $60 and you bought it for 10. So it's interesting how that happens. Like, do you like occasionally go for some Keepa charts where you're a bit on the fence and you'll just buy it as almost an experiment? Do you do that often or at all?
That's a good question. I would say very infrequently. There's a lot of times where I'm on my YouTube channel, I'm actually live streaming and we're looking at potential book buys, and I'm like, this is a book that I'm not going to buy, but if I had to put my money on it, I would say probably 8 out of 10 times this would probably make the profit that I'm saying it would make, even though there are some reasons that would make me not want to buy it. So generally, because I do buy fewer books, like the books that I buy, I'm like 100% confident in. I'm like, dude, there's like a very, very, very high likelihood that this is going to happen, and probably very small likelihood that it wouldn't. So, I mean, obviously there have been books that I bought on the fence before, and some of them have worked out and some of them haven't, but I tend to try to really make sure that what I'm buying is actually going to sell and is going to sell for a nice profit. And I think that's reflected in like the average buy cost and average sell price, because there is a big difference between those two values. So it's like, if you think about that being your average, your average margin, then obviously if you're buying a book on the fence, it's probably still likely that at worst case scenario, you break even or you make a little bit of money. But going back to the point that you said, yeah, there have been some books that just because of unforeseen circumstances tanked, and they still end up selling. So a lot of times you can make your money back at the worst case scenario, or make a little bit of money.
Yeah, you're always going to have books that tank, or for example, I'm sure you've experienced this with certain like anime, manga, comics. Me and my team went deep on those last year, and so many of them Amazon will go back in $10, and we're having to like sell it for $9, which with FBA fees you end up losing like $5 plus the buy cost. Yeah, we lost a lot of money on those books, and we're still buying them because they do sell well when they fell. But probably
those books go out of stock. I think those books definitely, went out of stock with COVID, but it seems like over the last couple of years, those books come in and out of stock. But like you said, when they come on a listing, new third parties or Amazon, it's like $9.99, $11.99. It's like 100 copy. It's like, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, we've had to liquidate a lot of stock this month, and it's not a pretty sight. But so I'd like to ask you a couple of questions I know people will be interested in. So my first one is like, would you be happy to share what it doesn't have to be your most profitable book, but like maybe like an example of like one of your best buys or highest sell price or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I just had one like 2 or 3 days ago. It was a book I bought for $109 and sold for $600. So that's probably in recent memory the best book flip that I've had. I think probably the best ROI I've ever had is I bought a book using the Keep a Deals page on Amazon for 92 cents and flipped it for 150. So I think that was probably my biggest ROI flip. And then I've done some Facebook deals in the past. Like I think my best Facebook deal ever was there was like a 15 book, I think it was welding. I think they were welding books, like a 15 book welding deal for like $50 plus shipping. And one of the books sold for like $500. So I think on that one deal, I made like well over $1,500. So I think those are probably notably like some of the better flips.
If people aren't interested in selling books just based off those three, I don't know what will get you encouraged, but the opportunity really is out there. I feel like I don't know what other categories have got that sort of buying it for $1 and sell it for $150. It's absolutely crazy. But you mentioned keeper deals. Would you be willing to? Obviously, you don't need to go into super detail, but like what are your best sourcing techniques or just examples? So I've seen on your YouTube channel, which has got some great content on it. Like you using Flipmine, you're using Keeper Product Viewer, and are those your main sources? Do you have any other ones you like to use?
Yeah, so I have so Keepa specifically, Keepa Deals is really insane. And ironically, I was just looking at your YouTube channel the other day, and I realized that you had a Keepa Deals video. I was like, dude, I've never seen any video of anyone ever use Keepa Deals. So that was actually kind of cool to see you using that. I think that was a couple of years ago as well. But yeah, essentially the best practice for Keepa Deals is that you're just trying to find used books, because that's what you're finding. So used books, I like to look at drop percentage of at least 50% in value. That is probably at least $35 in value, like $30 to $35 in value. And you could pick up a copy anywhere between like $0 and $30. Sales rank between 1 and 2.5 million. So again, I look for the books that have higher sales ranks. And really all it is, it's a numbers game. Like if you go out and you go scanning at thrift stores, like 95% of what you scan is junk. So Keep a Deal is probably like 80 to 90% of what you scan with your eyes is also junk. So it's just getting really good at reading Keepa charts. So there is this feature that Keepa gives you. It allows you to basically, when you hover an Amazon product, it allows the Keepa chart to pop up. So if you don't have that little filter selected to yes, then this would be much harder. But essentially you just use your cursor and you just go down, like almost like if you are a scanner yourself, and you're simply just looking for books that hold some good value, and then they see a pretty big sharp decrease in price over time. I would say Keepa Deals is pretty insane. Like that book that I found for 92 cents was someone who mispriced it. They probably meant to put 92 and they put 92 cents. So I was able to buy that and flip it for 150, like I said. So I would say Keepa Deals is a big one. Also the Keepa Track Product Alert. I'm sure you probably use that. Super, super undervalued as well. Like there's so many books out there that might sell for 150 pretty much like all the time, but there are sometimes for whatever reason people come on the listing at 40 or 50 bucks, and if you snag that up, you can flip it for 150. So definitely tracking a whole bunch of products. I think right now I'm tracking like maybe close to 4,000 books. Basically with a Keepa subscription, you can track up to 5,000. And after that, you have to get a different email because Keepa basically only lets you track up to 5,000. So I'm not sure how many you're tracking. You might have multiple Keepa accounts if you're doing that, but I would say track product feature is really great. And then the product finder is basically just an extension of the deals page where you could put in very specific parameters to find books that you would envision being worth reselling. So with the product finder, it's all about envisioning that book that you want to find. So it's like maybe you want to find a book that has seen maybe a repricing war in the recent past over the last 30 days. That's maybe 50% off of its kind of long-term historical selling average. And you could use that tool to sort of find the books that you're looking to resell. So that's all the Keepa side. And I would say probably about like 60% of what I do is just Amazon to Amazon flips of that. Flipmine is also a really great resource. I have a couple of videos on my channel. I'm not sure how much of that you use, but definitely there's a lot of potential there. Most of my higher dollar profit books actually come from eBay because most of the time those are people who just don't know what they have and they're just listing it super undervalued. I'm not really sure why a lot of people sell their stuff super undervalued, but eBay is definitely a great source with Flipmine. And then also kind of on the side, I also have a web scraping Python code that I use for Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp and Craigslist that basically will, look for specific keywords on that marketplace, and it'll then take the images and reverse image Google search them, try to match them up with Keepa's API. And if they have like a certain selling price over $50 or so, then basically it'll send me a spreadsheet with an email with all these different listings. And then the idea is you could go through there, you can scan the images with your phone, make sure that these are actually books that could be worth selling. And then, you could set up some sort of way to actually get the person to actually ship you the books to you. So I also have a few of those that I run, and let's say maybe about like 20% of the books that I buy are that. It's a little bit harder way to source books because inherently you have to communicate with people. Like you have to figure out how to get them to ship it to you. You have to figure out payments. So it's definitely a lot harder to do, but it's definitely very profitable.
That's super helpful. Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear how much you use Keepa because me and my team obviously use it all the time, and I find it hilarious how the deals page is kind of Keepa's best kept secret. People just don't realize how good it is. And that video I did on YouTube, I think the only thing that makes my approach a little bit different to what people realize is just because I changed it from boxes to tables, so the data's a lot easier to read. And so many people are kind of like amazed by that. But I love the deals page. It's Well, like it's effectively keeper tracking almost like a bunch of like drops every time a book drops. It's like reloading every minute or so. So it's a constant flow or stream of good deals. So if people aren't using it, you definitely should. That kind of brings me on to another question I'd love to hear your thoughts on. So obviously you've been selling for a long time. I don't know like how crowded you thought the market was when you first started. Obviously you probably weren't aware because it was new to you, but like I haven't really noticed the market increasing necessarily that much in FBA sales over the last 5 years. But like on that note, I'd like to ask you, like, do you think like books is ever going to get saturated?
Yeah, I don't, it's funny, back to 2016, 2017, I think it was very much more the wild, wild west. Like I remember selling just a whole bunch of random stuff in the beginning when I was getting started, and Amazon didn't really care back then. Obviously they've tightened up restrictions a lot now. I would say it's definitely harder for new sellers to get started because now, from my understanding, most people who come on Amazon, like they're pretty much restricted in all books and they have to like manual engage like pretty much all the books. So I think it's definitely harder to get started as time goes on, and that makes sense. Amazon's a bigger company. There's more legislation to try to prevent Amazon from taking advantage of customers by not vetting sellers properly. So I think it's going to get harder to sell on Amazon over time because there's got to be more of a vetting process so that they make sure that the customers are actually getting good products from good sellers. But I would say I don't think it's any more saturated. Like I think there are always tons of people coming and there's always tons of people going. Like every Facebook that you've joined, it's like every day there's, hey, I just started this journey, here's my first pickup. And then there's also the, hey, I'm getting out of the business, I have 2,000 books, here's my Dymo label printer. Like there's like, so I feel like it's just an ebb and flow. It's probably like a keep chart. If you looked at the used offer count, and the used offer count represents the number of used sellers, it's probably very up and down like this, but pretty much very stable. You know what I mean? Maybe growing slightly, but I would say not saturated at all. I think that's just an excuse of you not being able to source well enough. And I would say if you're not finding anything, it's because I think you just have to get better at sourcing, and you have to, I don't know, maybe think more outside the box. But like I said, Keep a Deal is a great place to start. Like Product Finder, like there's so many ways that you can find books, and there's also so many different products that you can sell besides books anyway. So I would say if you really want it, then you'll go out and you'll get it. I don't think it's saturated.
Yeah, I agree. I like your positive outlook. It's like you say with the offer count, Amazon's always getting bigger as well, isn't it? So even if people are joining, like isn't there some crazy stat that there's however many thousands of new sellers every day, but obviously the percentage of them that A, even ship a product, and B, make profit is probably quite low. But would that be your advice to new sellers to start with books? Because I would always say it is, because it's the lowest barrier to entry. I'm looking at books on my bookshelf that I could probably sell. I'm sure most people have got books that they could sell in their house, but like, would that be your advice to newbies? And if so, I know you've kind of already elaborated on what you'd say, but like what sort of advice and how much money? I know everyone likes the question, how much money do you think you need to start an Amazon business?
Great question. Yeah, 100% books is the lowest hanging fruit. It's the easiest because there's this weird dichotomy with books, which is people, and when I say people, I mean the general public, doesn't really assign any value to books, but at the same time, they don't throw them away either. So it's like, it's really ironic that there's these things that people don't think have value, but they're not willing to throw them away. Like most of the time, if something doesn't have value, just trash it, just throw it away. So easiest way is to start with free book pickups and just get your repetitions in. So get yourself a scanning software like Scout IQ or Scoutly, get yourself a scanner, just do free book pickups. Like I just made I have this new series on my YouTube channel, 0 to 1,000, where I'm literally pretending like I had $0 and saying, this is how I would go from $0 to 1,000. So there's been 2 episodes out already. And just to show you how easy it was, I started with just making a little Canva, little infographic Canva. You can do that for free. And I just said, hey, free book pickup. I literally put it down in the laundry room at my apartment complex, which has about 100 units. It sat out there for about 3 weeks, and finally someone gave me a call. So keep in mind that literally the most number of people that would see this is like 100 or 200 people, which is not a lot of people. Like, obviously, if you post this on, not sure what sort of apps are there in England, but if you're here in America, there's the Nextdoor app, there's Facebook Marketplace, there's OfferUp, there's Craigslist, like, plus not to mention all the other people that you already know in your daily life. There's college camp, like there's so many places that you could put this out there for a free book pickup. But anyways, back to the video that I made, I put just a free book pickup. Someone called me, I was able to get maybe about 50 books, and most of them were worth nothing, but I was able to sell about like 15 of them back to a buyback company and make like $12. And I was then able to take the $12, buy a book for $10 on OfferUp, and then sell to a buyback for 50. And then it just got the ball rolling. So it's like, if I could start in this little microcosm of my apartment complex and start with $0, obviously I have all the knowledge that you don't have yet, but if you have the hustle, you could definitely go out and you can do it starting with $0. And I would also say that most of you probably don't have $0, and most of you probably don't have zero resources. Like for some of the books that I shipped out, like I had to go dumpster diving for it because I wanted this to be like super authentic and say like I didn't use anything. Like I literally went to my recycling bin, like the dumpster here, and was able to pull out a box that I could use to send the books in. So you probably have resources. You probably have books like Seth says sitting on your table that are actually worth something. But I would say is just get the repetitions in, start scanning stuff. Really great advice in the beginning is stay under 1 million ranking books so that you know it's actually probably going to sell. Now, as you get a little more experience, you'll understand that sales rank is more dynamic, and then that number really doesn't mean anything. It's more about looking at the Keepa graph and figuring out when does a sales rank actually drop and how that gives you a better idea of how often the thing actually sells. And probably a lot of you, if you're using your scouting softwares, you actually would use eScore, which is like the number of days it's sold in the last 180 days. So I would say, maybe start with an eScore of like 10, sales rank of 1 million, and just go through volume, get your repetitions in, send a couple shipments in. I have a couple YouTube videos using GoToLister, AccelerList, like how to get your first shipment started. So I would say all the information is there if you want to do it, but the question is like, do you want to do it? Because it really isn't that hard, but you have to take a leap of faith and you actually got to try to do it.
Great advice. And I'm sure if people get started, you'll realize you'll get the bug. I remember like I properly got it when I first started just like looking at thousands of books. I was just like, where's the next profitable book that I can find? There's just, it's an addictive game sourcing. Obviously, I don't really do it that much now, but I still buy the occasional Keepa when it pops up, just because it's too good to like, what's the word, to skip. We've been going for nearly an hour now, so I think that's probably a good time to start wrapping up, because you've given some great advice there. Actually, you didn't say how much money you think is a good amount. I guess you said you don't really need much at all, but
yeah, I would say, I think you could very easily start with $250. Like if you have $250, I think you can get everything that you need. You can get yourself, a couple boxes. You can get yourself some 30 up label sheets to start labeling your products. You can get, you can even buy a printer if you need to buy a printer if you didn't already have one. So I think you could honestly do it from $0, but if you're really scrappy, but I think if you had $250, like that's all you need to get started. Obviously, it's not like you're going to just jump right into online arbitrage, because you actually need like online book arbitrage, because you actually need to spend money to do that. But I'm talking about more of like the local pickups, going to thrift stores. Your buy cost is going to be between like $1 and $3 a book. So, and plus free book pickups are free. So I would say $250, you could totally do it. And you could even do it with $0. But it's really comes down to how much action you want to take. And it's information's there. It's just, will you actually do it?
So stop watching and listening to this and get out to your local thrift store. But yeah, I want to be respectful of your time. Do you want to tell everyone where and how to find you, what you're up to? I know you said you've got a couple of courses coming out and stuff. Like let us hear what you got going on.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, Seth. So yeah, I have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, Joji Davenport. I talk all about online book arbitrage, and I have one course that is going to be coming out soon with Steve Rakin, which is all about how to get your first VA specifically for Amazon FBA. So the whole idea there is that we're going to try to really break it down so that jumping into getting your VA is actually much easier. Like it's not so much, there isn't so much anxiety behind it. So we're going to give you like some email templates for how to do the email interview process. I'm also going to basically do an entire Keepa training, many hours of Keepa training that have plenty of actual like real quizzes, just like as if they were in school, because I'm a high school chemistry teacher, so they could take quizzes as well. So the idea is that with that course, we're really going to try to make sure that you're finding a VA that actually is good for you and can do exactly what you need to do. But generally, yeah, I'm just, I'm also on Instagram, just Joji_Davenport. Yeah, if you want to reach out, feel free to send me a message, and if I can, I'll do my best to help you out.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate you coming on. I know everyone would have got lots of value from that, and I can vouch to everyone that Joji's YouTube content is incredible. You really won't find much else out there on online book arbitrage, and he is showing you the books he's buying and that he's selling them. It's all legit. So yeah, I really appreciate your content, and hopefully I can start producing some as well to be side by side with you. But yeah, and I'm sure hopefully we'll do a round 2 of this, because I think we've got plenty more to talk about. But for now, we'll end this part 1. and I'll let you get about your morning. But yeah, thanks, Joji, and I'll chat to you soon.
All right, chat to you soon. All right, peace out.
Cheers.